Alright, we're now ready to move on with our drawing and add some cell shading. So if we have our cupcake now, I should point out that you should be somewhere along this where you have a cherry, some icing, and the cupcake itself. So that you can do basically the same thing that I'm doing. And I should point out that we have not really talked about color. We just pick some random colors, but doing a simple Google image search can give you something that has even better colors than what we've chosen. So I'm going to copy that image, go over to my flash file, go over to swatches, and I'm going to remove all these colors because these colors are terrible. And I want to replace the colors that are there. I just pasted with Control V, that's edit paste. It was there, paste and center. I pasted that image in here so I can sample some of these colors and turn these into swatches. To sample the color, go to the eyedropper tool, make sure that we are on the fill, which we currently on, and I'm going to select the color and then paste it up there. Same thing, I go to another thing, select darker red and paste it up there. If I want to get one of the colors of icing, I can grab that color, put it up there. Maybe go for one of the slightly darker versions of it. Paste it up there. And I can even grab this kind of like chocolatey, kind of looks like red velvet look. Alright, so I just sampled some of those colors just so I got something quick and dirty to deal with. It would also be important, by the way, to have a color which is really garish and ugly, because we're going to be using this. I'm going to grab a bright green or something like that and paste it up there, because I'm going to need that color in just a minute. Alright, now we're going to continue with our cell shading, and I'm going to do this in stages so that I don't have to deal with every object alone or together. I'm going to kind of separate them so I can just apply cell shading to what I want. In order to go into each group, you have to double click. So I'm going to double click and go inside of the first one. By the way, I did Control plus and it just kind of forces you to go in. I should point out that one of the methods for zooming in, which really is more effective, is by holding down the Control Shift key together and using the middle mouse wheel, because it allows you to zoom in to where you want instead of using Control plus. I've just got that habit of using Control plus. It's hard to break. Anyway, here's my drawing. First thing that I want to do is I want to deal with these strokes. These strokes being all this red is kind of annoying. That's not a typical color that you see. So I'm going to change it to black because you do see that a lot. And I'm also going to change this to 1. The reason why is we want to make these strokes generally thinner. But a lot of times with vector drawings you see on the outside a thicker stroke. So I'm going to go around the outside of this object by holding down the Shift key as I click on the outside with the black arrow, and I'm going to change that one to 2. This is just something you see a lot in vectors, so we might try that technique and see if it works for us. Now, in order to apply cell shading, we need to imagine that there's a light source over to the side over here, and I'm going to imagine it's on the right hand side. And so that means that the left hand side of this object is generally going to be a different color. So we're going to do a line that bisects some of these areas and makes that color change. So the technique that I'm going to use is called the line tool technique, or that's what I call it at least. And another thing that's important about this technique is make sure that you're in object drawing mode. The reason why is because when you draw this object initially, and I want to make sure, by the way, it's that bright green, I want to make sure it doesn't interact with the object, so I can freely move it around and deal with it before I commit to it being exactly where it's going to stay. Anyway, you would need to click off of it to be able to bend it and adjust it. Alternately, you can click inside of it and adjust it that way, which totally works. So I'm just going to imagine where the shadow would hit on this object. I'll just imagine it's kind of like that. And so the light will hit here, and then this side will be dark. Now that that is pretty good, double-clicked on the outside to get out to the main level, and I'm going to break this apart. By hitting Control B or right-clicking, let me go backwards, right-clicking and choosing Break Apart, Control B is the same thing, it allows me to then select the different sections of this. And if I get in real close, I'll see there's the other one right there. Now I can adjust these and change them so that they use cell shading. Now I didn't change this color, so I'm going to go over to the color swatch, or the color panel, and you'll see here if I'm on HSB, we want to really be on the B1 to use this technique properly. You'll see that we've got a slider, and I can change that value so it's just a little bit darker than what we currently have, and you'll see that it'll apply the shading that we want. Then double click on the green line, delete it, and you'll see that we have that shading applied. Now it's pretty subtle right now. We might want to make it just a hair bit darker. So I'm going to select that, make that just a tiny bit darker, and you'll see keep on forgetting to use the control. There we go. I'm going to make that the same color by copying the color from the others. There you go. There, so now we've applied cell shading to that one thing to apply it to just the one side. Now let's go on to the other object and see about applying cell shading to this. Now I just magically zoomed into it, and another thing that I've done is I need to go inside of this because remember that it is a group. Now we're going to look at a couple different other ways that we can do some cell shading. We can also do cell shading by, instead of using a line, using something like a simple rectangle and then just modifying it. Now this rectangle currently has a stroke, which I really don't need that stroke. If I take a look at the fill right now, it is a similar color but just a little bit different. There we go. It's a little different now. Now what I'm going to do is start adjusting this object. Now if I break it apart so it is a part of the original, now I can really start to mess with it. Let's see. If you hold down the control key too, you can start to add some points to it, which is kind of nice. Now I'm just going to start to modify this shape a little bit. And inside here, maybe I'll add another little point, move that down. You don't have to be too worried about getting this exact because, you know, this is somewhat an organic thing. You know, especially the fact that this is supposed to be kind of a mushy substance. It means that our cell shading can also be a little bit inexact and be kind of still useful. Alright, so let's see. I've got that kind of set. Now what I'm going to do is select that and that so I can apply this to a different color. I'm going to begin by making it the same color as that and then adjust my color just a little bit. So it kind of works. It's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect. That's one of the nice things about this sometimes, is that sometimes a little bit of inexact is good. You do need to be aware of things like that. You saw I made a little point there I didn't really mean to make. So just be aware of stuff like that. You might need to adjust stuff a little bit. Now we can be a little bit different when we do the other ones. So maybe I can have this one kind of come over here. In this case, maybe we'll try the line technique. I like the line technique because it's just really easy to control. So I'm going to kind of adjust that. So it seems as though that's going to connect everything. So I'm going to now break it apart. Select that other side. Make it the same color as that. Then double click on that green line and remove it. Now we can do the same thing over here. Oops. Make that, and then I'm even going to start to adjust this line a little bit. Keep on messing with it. just don't want it to be perfect. I'm just trying to give a little bit of something in there. Now I'm going to break that apart, select the line, break it apart. You'll see we now have a little bit more organic shape. I select the other color, remove that green line, and we've got ourselves some sort of fun little shading in there. So now we just have to apply a little bit down here and maybe just a little bit down here. Let's see, I think maybe, whoops, the line tool right in here to there, and the line tool from here to there. Break apart, select that, double click on that green line, double click on that green line, get rid of them all, and you can see we've got some cell shading that we've applied. And you can go back and, like I said, you can modify that cell shading if you need. Maybe you want to do something fun with it to make it look a little bit more organic. You can even go to the white arrow and mess with these, which is kind of fun. So you can see we've just given it some sort of look. Now, of course, just like the other one, we should apply the same settings for the lines. So that means that typically they will be 2, except the inside lines will be 1 point. Oh, there's another one that we need just that line right there to be 1. There we go. That looks a little bit nicer. And then, of course, the last thing that we would want to apply this to would be the cherry. And I think you can figure out some ways to apply that to the cherry and, of course, do the same thing. But you'll see the end result is not too bad. Now, obviously, we have some other places we can apply the cell shading. We can add some cell shading in here. We can actually do some of that cell shading by having possibly a duplicate of this object that we just have a part of. For example, if we were to make all of that kind of a dark color, kind of figure out where that thing might need to lie in here. I think that's about maybe where it could lie. And if we make it just slightly bigger, then we can kind of offset that a little bit too. Now I'm going to select that line, get rid of it, there we go. Move that down, and that's going to be kind of, I need that to kind of sit on top of that other object somewhere. So I'm going to cut that, go inside of it, paste, move it down before I let go, because as soon as I let go it's going to cut into it. There you go. Now I can adjust that color, remove that line, which I should have changed to a different color, but I didn't. Make that just a little bit darker. There we go. Now when we put that back on top, you can see it kind of adds a shadow to it. There we go. It's not perfect. That's why sometimes even that kind of works. Just a little bit of adjustment to it. So it's not exactly the same. There you go. That looks even better. It's just a little bit different than the other one. Alright, so now that we have this object ready, there's kind of our cupcake. You might find that some of these lines are pretty strong. It's not always necessary that they're there. It could be that with the cell shading you have enough, and that you don't need those lines. If I remove them, take a look at what that object looks like without all that cell shading. You might find that it works quite well without it. Here, obviously, we kind of need it for these lines, so it could be that we could use something different color, and it'd work quite well. It's just something that you have to adjust with each individual drawing. Anyway, with this now, I'm ready to turn this into a library object. In order to do that, I'm going to select the entire object. you'll see we have the bitmaps that we brought in from before. And I'm just going to click and drag that down into my library. And that should be called Cupcake. The benefit of the library object is that I can have multiple copies of this, and they're all based upon the same drawing. If I remove it, not a big deal. I just bring it back out and it's right there. Now we're ready to go ahead and test our scene, but I wanted to point out at the beginning, we never hid our original drawing. It's still there. Very easy. Just right click on it, choose Guide Layer, and now the only thing that we should see when we test our movie with Control Enter is our drawing. And that concludes this tutorial. I know it goes through a lot of different stuff, so try and do your best to draw a cupcake with some sort of cell shading, and good luck, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.